California homeowners, you better get ready for more cancellations in your homeowner's insurance and massive spikes in your insurance rates. Coming up, we'll tell you the real reason driving the insurance crisis in California. And no, it ain't climate change. And we offer a common sense reform plan that we need your help to implement. Coming up, how we can save California homeowners money on their insurance and protect their homes. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California, and we've seen a crisis in insurance rapidly escalate in the state of California. But California's Democrat supermajority, they're not interested in actually solving the problem. In fact, they've created the problem, and there doesn't seem to be any willingness on their part to correct anything, to give you an assurance that you're going to be able to keep your home insurance and give you any sort of relief on your insurance rates. Let me first go to the summary of our crisis here. This is from Bankrate. It's a pretty good summary of what we're seeing going on. Limited home insurance options in California as major carriers pull back. It's a little understated. How about homeowners losing coverage in droves? Homeowners being rate priced out of their home because the rate increase goes so high that they can no longer afford to live in their home. I am getting calls at my office at Reform California from people from all walks of life who are being hit by insurance cancellations and massive spikes in their insurance rates. One lady I spoke to, and it's very similar to many conversations I have, but this one was particularly emotional. She is in her 70s. She actually owns her home outright. She has insurance because this is her biggest investment. This is her home. And she's on fixed income, Social Security, and a very modest income stream from a small 401k. There's not a lot of spending money for her. She's already suffering under Joe Biden and his massive inflation spike, as well as suffering under the bad cost of living policies here in California under California Democrats. Well, she got her insurance canceled, and she spent a lot of time trying to find any company to pick her up. She was forced into something called the California Fair Plan, which is a government-run insurance program, which is the last resort option for homeowners for insurance. Doesn't even cover most items. It's just the catastrophic insurance for fire. Her insurance is going from $2,300 a year, which she was able to pay in monthly increments, or she said she did it every 6 months, to over, are you ready for this? $9,500. And she called me in tears. She said, I don't have that money. I'm going to be priced out of my home. I have medicine. I've got my food needs. She's barely surviving as is. She's desperate, but she has nowhere else to go. And her story is indicative of so many other Californians who are getting smacked with insurance cancellations as companies pull out of the market. And the only places they can go as last resort have premiums that are through the roof that they really are going to struggle with. The litany of insurance companies that are fleeing California, I mean, these are household names. And I want to point out that these insurance companies were indicating there was a crisis coming back in 2020, 2021, 2022. Here we are in the middle of 2024, and California Democrat politicians have done nothing, absolutely nothing to act to address the crisis. So November 2022, Allstate pauses new insurance. May 2023, State Farm announces it will no longer accept new applications. July 2023, Farmers says they will be dramatically capping any new insurance. July 2023, Amgard and Falls Lake Insurance filed a notice of withdrawing from California entirely. August 2023, Safeco drops insurance in different regions of the state. August 2023, USAA announced it's limiting insurance coverage in California. Let's just go on and on and on and on. These companies pulling out. And then State Farm not just saying, hey, by March of 2024, they're saying not only are we not writing new policies, we're going to cancel 30,000 new policies, or current policies. It's not like the insurance companies haven't warned the politicians that it's completely unsustainable, unaffordable to operate in California, that they need to do something. Politicians have done absolutely nothing. They've dithered and dallied and dragged their feet. Oh, they have done one thing. They've blamed the entire thing on climate change. They say, oh, well, the reason why insurance is so expensive is that there was catastrophic losses from fires from climate change. No, that's actually false. Provably false. Insurance actually is in a crisis state in several parts of the country. Florida has had an insurance crisis, several other states as well. And it's not because of climate change. It is because of Biden inflation. And I've got the receipts to prove that. And there's a couple different ways I want to explain. And I think it'll open your eyes to, wow, it's not climate change, it's this. So first and foremost, we are seeing no increase from climate change in the number of fires in California. We are seeing an increase in the severity of fires. So the number of fires isn't increasing. It's the fact that when a fire does occur, it's harder to control. Why? Not because climate change created more fires all at once. It's because the fuel load on lands has gotten out of control. And that's for the past 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, California politicians, the liberals, have basically stopped forest management practices of thinning forests, allowing timber companies to come in and thin the forest and harvest the forest because the enviros have gone nuts. Remember all those enviros that would tie themselves to different trees? Well, when you let the fuel load build up on all these acres of land, and we're talking millions of acres, you're going to have, when a fire does occur, it's going to be almost impossible to manage and control. And the intensity of that fire will be so much greater a challenge. This is a man-made crisis. The culpability are the wacko environmentalists who now are trying to blame climate change and get us even into more insane environmental policies that will destroy our cost of living and our quality of life. So the number of fires not increasing. It's the forest management policy failures of California politicians. That's something that they can correct. It's going to take time, but they need to do that now, and they're not doing it. Second, it's the inflation. Most of the insurance losses are not wildfires. That's obviously a piece of the losses, but it's things like household floods. That's the number one insurance problem that homeowners file claims on. Flooding, pipes burst, maybe there's a rain issue, and they've got all sorts of damage. And so obviously a pipe bursting is not caused by climate change, and more rain. Again, the enviro wackos say that climate change takes rain away from us. It's a drought issue. So you've got basic flooding problems that exponentially are more expensive to repair. So it's the cost of repairs for building a new house after a fire or repairing a house after a pipe burst, a flood. It's the cost of labor. It's the cost of materials. That's all inflation. And what you see with Biden's inflation, particularly since COVID, is a massive increase, a disproportionate increase in costs in home improvement and construction. Those costs are off the charts. Think about it this way. And if you haven't done this, at least ask some friends that may have done this. Have you done any home improvement projects in the last 3 years? Did you do any home improvement projects between 2010 and 2019? Are they similar? Have you seen the difference in prices? It's about 3 times the cost. A typical project in 2016, 17 will cost now 3 times more after Biden's inflation in 2022, 3, and 4. And so when an insurance company gets a loss, it might be a singular pipe burst, but the cost of replacing the damage from that one pipe burst in 2024, 2 to 3 times higher than 2016, 2017. Now, insurance rates, the entire market is based upon an actuarial model, insurance actuaries. It's absolute science. It's not just guessing on how they set your rates. They actually have actuaries, and they look at the number of losses, the likelihood of losses, and the estimated value, replacement value, to repair their insured holders' homes. Where the actuarial models were way off um, is in the area of what it costs to replace, not the number of incidents, but the replacement value, which is the inflation side, as I mentioned. We also have insurance companies in California that cannot operate in our regulatory environment. The regulations are so toxic. An insurance company cannot rapidly respond to changes in their operating environment. It takes forever for them to put a rate case forward. And so insurance companies will err on the side of asking for higher rates, knowing that they've got a hedge in case there is a 2-year delay in their next rate case with the state of California because the politicians are dragging their feet. And so we see that it's not just the fire management policies that increase the severity of fires, because fires are an element of loss, but not, overwhelming. It's the inflation. A lot of it's inflation policies. And then, of course, it's the chaotic regulatory environment that insurance companies face here in California. Those major drivers have to be addressed by politicians, but we're seeing none of that. In fact, the Democrat insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, has dragged his feet. First and foremost, he's incompetent. He knew nothing about insurance when he got elected. He just wanted any statewide office. And so this guy literally is in over his head. Dumb as dirt, completely incompetent. But even today, there are some common sense reforms that are sitting on his desk that he has failed to enact. This guy has no sense of urgency. And so even if he acted today under his timeline that he's put out, it's going to be a year and a half before we get any updated rate models that would invite the insurance companies to come back to the state of California and make them comfortable that, hey, we can actually write policies again. So there's an utter failure of leadership in the state of California, even on the de minimis reforms that have to be implemented. And even those, I will tell you, are completely inadequate. And so Reform California has done a lot of research and discussion with insurance experts, people who understand the system and know why the current crisis exists. And I gave you a modest little tutorial previously on this podcast as to why we're where we are today. And so we've come up with an insurance reform plan. We are calling it the Reform California Insurance Reform and Rate Stabilization Initiative. And it basically takes on a couple key elements. First, we've got to reduce costly regulations. And that's where we need to immediately slash the cost of operating here in California. And frankly, we've got to do everything we can to drive down construction costs in the state of California. We have union-only mandates. We've got project labor agreements. We've got prevailing wage. We've got all sorts of regulation and permits, complex approval processes, CEQA regulation and lawsuits that drive up the cost of any construction project. This is not just about insurance. This is about the entire construction industry and building industry, and this gets into affordable housing, being in a crisis because of the cost of regulation. We need to slash that dramatically across the board in an emergency fashion. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have to update and cut the insurance regulations in terms of how we approve rate proposals and actuarial models and risk models for the insurance industry. Second, we have to fix fire management. immediately reverse all of those crazy wackadoo far left environmental extremist concepts of not thinning our forest, not doing fire management, not doing controlled burns, not doing vegetation buffers, defensible space. All of our fire management protocols need to be overhauled again in a Marshall Plan type fashion, where there's a sense of urgency, where we have to move quickly and get these acres quickly reduced in terms of their risk profile. Third, we have to stabilize rates. While the first two reforms take time to implement, we need not to have the burden of the transition to fall on the shoulders of you, the homeowner. Because again, I go back to that little old lady who's in her 70s. She can't go back to work. She can't afford the massive spike in premiums. Even if we did these first two reforms that I just talked about, it's going to take time for the cost efficiencies to settle in under Reform 1. And it's going to take time for the acres of habitat to be reduced in terms of their wildland fire risk. I don't believe that you should pay for the failure of Gavin Newsom, California Democrats, and Insurance Commissioner Yahoo Ricardo Lara. You shouldn't be the one paying the price. We got to take it out of the hide of the bureaucrats and the politicians. That's why I believe that the state of California General Fund should immediately be used to provide a rate rebate, a rate relief credit for all Californians. Where would this money come from? Well, first, you know that your insurance premiums have an automatic state tax that's applied to it? That's right. Billions of dollars collected by politicians by raising your insurance rates. How about we take that money and give it back to ratepayers immediately? Also, let's take that climate change money, because there's all sorts of climate dollars in the state budget, billions of dollars through the cap and trade tax. And let's use that to stabilize rates because, well, frankly, your absurd environmental failed policies created a lot of this upward pressure. And finally, since the politicians created the problem, let's start thinning the herd. Let's cut the state bureaucracy, because we've got to keep people in their homes. We cannot have insurance rate spikes pushing people out onto the street. It's just insane. Fourth, I do believe that because we are seeing a national problem with inflation and a national problem with insurance actuarial models not matching up with the replacement costs, again, it's happening in California, but it's also happening nationwide, that we need to have a national relief program when it comes to reinsurance. What reinsurance is when a large insurance company goes out and hedges its risk, hedges its exposure by getting reinsurance for the policyholders it has in its portfolio. This is an important market tool to stabilize risk and stabilize financial flows. And I believe that because of the Biden inflation, the federal government printing all this money, and the impact that's had on construction, we should have a federal readjustment program on the reinsurance side. Maybe they can cover some of the costs and bear some of the burden or take on some of the risk of providing reinsurance for these companies, or a guarantee for these companies for a period of time while we work through these reforms. Now, you might say, well, why should the federal government take on that hit? Well, if the federal government created this massive inflation spike, I think they should be part of the problem, part of the solution. And so the reinsurance stabilization program, I think, needs to be a federal conversation. Can't just be done state by state. Now, look, this is a rapid recovery plan. California Democrats are not going to want to implement it because it exposes their culpability in the crisis. It also means that they have to pony up some money so that you don't have to. They'd rather have your rates go up and blame it on climate change. That's the big scam that's happening right here. But we need to spread the word as to what's truly driving this crisis and sound the alarm that the politicians don't seem to be acting anytime soon. We have an election coming up in November, and that's the perfect time to talk to your neighbors about their challenges with insurance and explain to them why their votes should be sending a message this fall that we need insurance reform. Obviously, I'm running for state legislature, the state assembly district in San Diego. My residents are disproportionately impacted by these insurance cancellations because I have a lot of people living in rural areas that have a higher wildland fire risk profile. But it's happening all around the state of California. So we need to make this issue, insurance reform and the cost of insurance and the cancellation, a key issue in many of these races across the state. That's what Reform California is doing with our voter guides. And we invite you to join the fight. Go to the website, reformcalifornia.org, and first and foremost, sign up so that when we do issue our voter guide endorsements for candidate races and give the plain English description on what's on the ballot vis-a-vis the ballot measures. And the politicians always lie to us on the ballot with false and misleading titles on these measures. Sign up on that website at the bottom, and we will send you in the first week of October an email with the digital copy of the voter guide for races in your area. Also, chip in a contribution. We are supporting candidates up and down the state of California to try to break the Democrat supermajority in the state legislature and try to win some of these ballot measure fights across the state. Can't do that without your help. So please chip in a contribution today. Any amount, it puts fuel in the tank and powers this movement. Also, like and subscribe to this channel and like this video because it helps us goose the algorithm and spread the word about the truth about the insurance crisis in California. That's one simple way that you can help. 84% of people who are watching the video right now, according to the stats, are not subscribers. So please subscribe, and every day at 5 o'clock, we post a new show with a new topic to educate the public as to what's really going on in California news and politics. Until next time, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. Help us break through the censorship of the liberal media. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and smash that notification button so you can stay up to date on all the developments in California news and politics. Also, please visit the website, reformcalifornia.org, for ongoing news coverage and to join one of our campaigns in the fight to take back our state. If you can, please sign up as a volunteer or chip in a contribution. This episode of Reform California with Carl DeMaio, paid for by Carl DeMaio for State Assembly 2024.